welcome back to the show. This is the Mental Breakdown. I'm your host, Joey Velez, back at it with another piece of information that popped in my head over the last week, and I feel like it's important to share with you the conversations I have with others. But starting off with gratitude, I think I've mentioned this before, but it's safe to say that it's something I'm eternally grateful for. But social media. And I think social media gets a bad rap because there's a lot of bad things on there. I think it's become too much a part of our society. However, the part I'm grateful for is people who make how-to videos on, you know, daily tasks. For example, I bought a house 2 months ago, and I'm looking at things that I want to do with my house and how much it's going to cost for someone else to do it. But then it's like, let me go on YouTube, look at some videos, see if it's something I can do. And so I'm really grateful for the people that put out those kind of videos because I can't imagine they're making much from it. I mean, depending on who you watch, obviously, but it has been something very helpful to me. Like two things I want to do. One is paint the outside of my house, and then the other one is replace some flooring. Where I felt like that was too big of a task for me to handle on my own. Watching videos, I feel more comfortable in my abilities to do both of those tasks. Now we can argue if I'm crazy or not, being like, oh, I watched one video, I can do this now. I can be a contractor, sure, but I think it is helpful knowing that there are people out there that put out videos to help people in my situation. Maybe they think that they can't do something and that's going to cost too much money, but the ease that they make it look, maybe it gives me a little bit of hope and confidence that I can do that, which can help me save a little money and move that towards something else. So forever grateful for people who make those how-to videos. Um, Last weekend I went golfing out in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I do that about once a month when I go out there to get my haircut, and in order to make it a, you know, not me doing a 4 hour round trip drive just for a haircut, I like to play a little golf. And one question that always comes up with the random people that I get paired with, is obviously, what do you do for work? Right. So when I talk about myself as, I have my degree in sports psychology. I'm a mental performance coach with this group, with that group. A question that comes up a lot is, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody trying to work on that? And I vary my answers, but I think there's three things that typically pop up. I think the first one I talk about is that failure is an option. I think that is a myth that I like to uncover because a lot of people, especially a lot of high profile athletes, you hear them talk about failure is not an option. Well, that doesn't make sense. If you go into a game, you are going to win or lose, right? That is, failure is an option. If you take a test, you're going to pass or you're going to fail. Failing is an option. So I think one thing I like to highlight is that professional athletes, high profile athletes, highly successful people, deep down, they know that failure is an option. Now, where they differentiate themselves is they're focusing on, what do I need to do to make sure I'm successful? So I think that's one thing I tend to give as a piece of advice is like understanding that failure is an option. And once you can accept that, hey, there is a chance that I do fail here, I think it can allow you to move forward in identifying what are those steps I can take to make sure that I get the most out of this situation. When we try to avoid failure, or when we try to, blind ourselves by thinking like, hey, no, this will never happen. Well, what happens if you go into that performance and you make a mistake and now you are deemed a failure? It's going to be hard to kind of push through those moments. So I think one is identifying and understanding that failure is an option. I think two is doing your own sort of personal reflection, personal debrief after each and every performance. Not if the performance is bad, not if the performance is good. After each performance you have, do your own reflection. And within that reflection, it's what went well, how do I make sure I do this again? What didn't go so well, how do I fix it? I think sometimes we get fixated too much on the outcome, while important, but I think can get in the way of us truly identifying what it is that I need to continue to do, what it is that I need to fix. When you perform poorly, it is very easy to focus on everything that you have to do better, everything you have to fix, as you should. Right? We got to get better. However, the benefit of identifying something you did good within that poor performance, maybe it gives you a little bit of confidence. maybe it gives you a little bit of hope and optimism that things can get better. Or at the very least, maybe it keeps your confidence and motivation from dipping because, hey, it wasn't all bad. It was just, yeah, the majority of it was bad, but I still did this one thing good. And maybe that's what you need. I think sometimes when we perform well, maybe there is a tendency to either still look at the bad things, which I think is good, right? Because we don't want to be complacent. But maybe there's also a tendency to be like, oh, this performance went well, then I got nothing to worry about. Maybe I don't reflect or prep as much for the next time. So, regardless if you do good, regardless if you do bad, getting in the habit of identifying what you did well and what you didn't do so well, and then what do I want to do next time. I think what this also helps do is develop a more consistent mindset heading into each performance. The more consistent we are in our approach is going to lead to more likely performing more consistently. If I'm able to perform more consistently, then I'm going to have more accurate information about, what do I need to do next time, which may help increase my skill development each and every time I step into that athletic, academic performance environment. And then lastly, I think the big thing that I focus on too is like there is a difference between being positive and being optimistic. If you go out there and you perform poorly 4 times in a row, abstract number. If you go out there and you perform poorly consistently, it is going to be very challenging to tell yourself, hey, you got this, you can do it. A lot of us aren't going to believe ourselves because the more recent data shows me that I can't. So I think when I talk about being optimistic as opposed to being positive, it is okay to acknowledge that things are not going well. If I'm being positive, I'm not going to acknowledge that, which means maybe I'm not going to believe myself. So I think if you're in the scenario where you're not performing well, it's about telling yourself like, hey, let's acknowledge it. Hey, things aren't going great right now, but they don't always have to be that way. And I think that's where the true optimism comes in. It's telling yourself, hey, this is a right now thing, but it doesn't always have to be that way, right? So I think we're acknowledging the situation for what it is. We're not lying to ourselves about the current state of my performances, but we're leaving the door open to, hey, here's what I got to do to get better. So I think that's the big thing I also tell people is that, things aren't always going to be great. It's not always easy to be positive. It's easy to be happy and positive and confident when things are going well. But how do we maintain some sort of confidence, some sort of optimism when things aren't going well? And I think if we're able to do that, you're going to see I don't want to say it's going to be easier to get out of those holes of poor performance, but maybe you now treat each individual performance as its own thing, as opposed to treating that next performance as the last 5. The last 5 were bad, well, maybe this one's going to be bad too. But if I'm sitting there telling myself, hey, the last 4 weren't great, but that doesn't have to be this one, well, maybe that at least opens me up and leaves the door open of me having a successful performance within that last round. So if you're listening and you're wondering the same thing, like, hey, this guy talks about sports psychology, talks about mental skills, like what's a quick piece of advice? I don't think any sort of skill is always going to be quick, but I think understanding those 3 things, one, understanding that failure is an option. It's just what are we going to do about it? Making sure you're reflecting and debriefing your own performances, whether it's good or bad, identifying the same things each performance, what was good, what was bad, what I want to do moving forward, but then also focusing on being more optimistic as opposed to being positive. I think it's going to help you develop your mental skills a lot faster. I think it's going to help you develop your skill set a lot faster. And I also feel like it's going to help you, I don't want to say be more satisfied with life overall, but maybe it keeps you from beating yourself up for too long. Maybe it kind of helps keep you moving forward as opposed to falling too far back. And that's what I have for you all today. Okay, how to kind of enhance your mental game on a short, quick pieces of information, things like that. Appreciate your time as always. Don't forget to follow me on social media. I haven't posted too much on Velez Mental Performance, but it is still there. My goal is to get on that a little bit more. But with the podcast, you can always download it, share it with your friends, rate, review. Again, trying to grow this thing as much as I can. But that's it. Thank you all for your time and attention. Don't forget, today is a great day to make an impact on someone's life. All right, y'all. Have a good one.